Hey guys, YouTuber100 here. Alright, and now we're in with another Star Trek movie review. Now, as I start to take a look at the Next Generation films, here I am with a review of Star Trek Generations. So, I am a little more familiar with Star Trek The Next Generation TV series than I was with the original Star Trek TV series. I mean, I did watch like a few more episodes of the Next Generation, and I do like am a little more familiar with the series. And yeah, I mean, yeah, out of all like the Star Trek TV series, the Next Generation is probably the one that I'm most familiar with. Yeah, and yeah, it did have like a pretty big cast of characters. Like it had, of course, Patrick Stewart as Captain Jean-Luc Picard, had Jonathan Frakes as Commander William Riker. It had, of course, like LeVar Burton as Geordi LaForge, and Brent Spiner as Commander Data, Michael Dorn as Commander Worf. And so yeah, it did have kind of like another like big cast of characters with like now in control of the Enterprise. And I did like it was interesting how really with this film like was released like right around the time when the TV series was just like wrapping up. And I thought it was interesting how like the Next Generation films were released like during the times that like Deep Space Nine and Voyager series aired on TV. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And as far as how I feel about this film, well, it's kind of it's really strange. Like, I really don't know. Like, this film is just kind of like half and half. It's really hard for me to say whether or not this is a good film or a bad film because, I mean, it's just like all over the place. Like, at some points there are some good scenes. At some points it can just like get really dumb and not really make a lot of sense. And yeah, it's just like all over the place, really. I mean, it definitely does have some strong elements to it, but at the same time, it does have like a really bunch of like subplots that really like don't make a lot of sense, to be honest. I mean, in this film we have the stuff with like Picard learning that like his brother and nephew were apparently like killed in a fire or something, and really like this just came out of nowhere because like there was like very few references ever to Picard's family in the Next Generation series at all. So yeah, it's just kind of strange to like see something like that come up. Yeah. And of course, also like in this movie, like once again, like we do see Kirk again in this movie. So yeah, it is good to see Kirk again. Though his appearance in this movie, it is like very limited. Like in this movie, Kirk really acts more as like a supporting character in this. I mean, when I first heard about this movie and when I knew Kirk was in it, I thought there was going to be something like Kirk was like a major character in this movie and he was like working with the new Enterprise crew and stuff. But yeah, that's not really the case. Yeah, Kirk is just like a really like has a very limited role in this movie, and yeah, he really just really does a lot of stuff. Really comes in like he does have the appearance in the beginning of the movie, and then he comes around like in the end when Picard goes to him for help. I mean, if this film would have been something like with like the entire original crew of the Enterprise interacting with like the new Enterprise crew, I probably would have liked this movie more. Like there aren't like Kirk comes back in this film, and also of course like Scotty and Chekhov also have like a small appearance at the beginning of the film also. And also like originally Leonard Nimoy and DeForest Kelley were originally meant to appear in this movie reprising their roles as Spock and McCoy, but they ended up like turning down the roles. So yeah, that kind of sucked that we couldn't really get to see Spock in this film also. I mean, yeah, I would have liked to see like Spock and Kirk kind of like interact with like Picard and all the Next Generation crew. So yeah, it kind of sucked that that happened. But yeah, as a whole, this really isn't like a horrible movie. I mean, yeah, it's just kind of mixed on it. I would probably say like this movie is like a thumbs in the middle. It's just like really hard to say whether or not this is a good or bad film. I would probably give this film, I don't know, 2.5 stars out of 4. I mean, yeah, it's kind of like just like an in the middle rating because yeah, it's just like really hard to judge this film just because like it has elements all over the place that really are good, bad, stupid, strong. Yeah, it's just really all over the place. So yeah, I kind of just like give it a rating right in the middle. All right, so yeah, oh yeah, and I should also say like up to this point, this is where like really haven't seen any other of the movies prior. Like I should have probably said like in my last review when I reviewed Undiscovered Country, like before I like started these reviews, like I only like went up like probably like part of the way up Undiscovered Country prior to actually reviewing these movies. So yeah, up to this point, this is where like I'm watching these movies for the first time. Well, yeah, up to aside from like the 2009 film which I saw in theaters. So yeah, aside from that, yeah, I really haven't seen any of the other Star Trek movies at all, like any more than I'm reviewing now. All right, so yeah, I guess just wanted to get that out there real quick. All right, so yeah, let me just get right into it. All right, so the movie opens in the year 2293, where the now retired Kirk, Scotty, and Chekhov end up attending a maiden voyage of the Enterprise B starship, which is under the command of Captain John Harriman. Yep. And like as they're on the voyage, like the Enterprise ends up like being pressed into a rescue mission to save like a couple of El-Aurian ships from like this mysterious energy ribbon in space. And then the Enterprise did succeed in saving some of the refugees before the ships ended up being destroyed. But then like the Enterprise ended up being like trapped in the ribbon. And so then Kirk ended up like altering the deflector dish, which gave the Enterprise time to escape. But like the trailing end of the ribbon actually ended up breaking across the hull of the Enterprise, which exposed the section that Kirk was in to space, and then it just like showed that Kirk wasn't there and he was presumed dead. And then yeah, it was never actually like clearly established if like Kirk was actually killed during this part or not. So yeah, it's just kind of like something that's left in the air for us to decide for ourselves. Yeah, and then it cuts to the year 2371, and then now the crew of the Enterprise D, which is yeah now the Next Generation crew. Yeah, they are celebrating Worf's promotion to the lieutenant commander, and like during the celebration, then like Captain Picard then just ends up receiving a message that his family was killed in the fire. And yeah, he kind of like keeps this to himself, like he doesn't tell any of the other crew members what is going on. Yeah. And then eventually, then the Enterprise then received a call from an observatory in orbit of the Amargosa star, and then they find like there's a new, like an El-Aurian that they rescued, who's Dr. Tolian Sorhan. And then yeah, Data and Geordi eventually like discover like there's some trilithium in a hidden room inside of the observatory. And then Sorhan then ends up like appearing in the room, and then he just ended up knocking out Geordi. And then he ended up launching a solar probe of trilithium at the Armagosa star. And then like it just ended up causing the star to just like implode, and then it ended up like sending a shockwave at the observatory. And then eventually then like Sorhan just ended up like taking Geordi's visor, and yeah, that was interesting because yeah, this was the first time I ever saw like Geordi's visor removed from his eyes. So yeah, the first time I actually like seeing him without the visor. So yeah, that was interesting. And yeah, they ended up being transported in by like the Klingon bird of prey, which belongs to like the Duras sisters. And it turned out like they stole the trilithium for Sauron in exchange for like a trilithium weapon design. Yeah. Yeah, but yeah, Data like ended up like being rescued before the station ended up being destroyed by the shockwave. And yeah, I guess I should talk a little bit about Data because yeah, he can get kind of weird in this movie because he's like given like an emotion chip or something in this movie, and then he just like becomes really weird and at times kind of annoying, like unable to control his emotions and stuff. So yeah, I guess like Data's probably one of the negatives of this movie because like he just gets really annoying sometimes. Yeah. Then eventually, like the bartender of the Enterprise, Guinan, or yeah, is it Guinan, something like that? Yeah, who's played by Whoopi Goldberg. Yeah, she like eventually like explains to Captain Picard about Sauron, and that and she kind of like just explained what happened before to the Enterprise B in 2293, but yeah, basically what like happened at the beginning of this film. And she explained to Picard that Sauron was like obsessed with re-entering the Nexus, which is like a extra dimensional realm where like there's really no meaning of the time and people can have the experience to see whatever they desire. I mean, yeah, we've kind of seen this before, kind of like the Mirror of Erised in the first Harry Potter. Yeah, so that. Yeah. And eventually, Picard and Data find that Sauron is actually like he's really not able to fly any sort of ship into the Riven because of the uncertainty that the ship would be able to survive long enough to really ensure success. And what he is planning to do is alter the path of the ribbon by destroying stars. And his plan is to attempt to re enter the Nexus on the planet Beridian 3. And he plans to destroy the sun and also like a and like a really populated planet in the system by extension and stuff, yeah. And eventually the Enterprise entered the Viridian system, and then they are able to make contact with the Duras of Prey, and they see that they have like Geordi aboard, and then Picard offered himself in exchange for Geordi, but he also like wanted to be transported to where Sauron was before coming aboard the Bird of Prey. And so then Picard was then beamed, and as he was beamed off, Geordi was then beamed back aboard the Enterprise. But it turned out like as Geordi was aboard the Bird of Prey, he like ended up like inadvertently revealing the shield frequency of the Enterprise. And so then that of course like allowed the Duras sisters to inflict some really like big damage to the Enterprise. Yeah. And then eventually like then the Enterprise ended up destroying the Bird of Prey, but there was some damage inflicted to the Enterprise and it was irreversible to the core of the war. Yeah. But then and Commander Riker then just had an evacuation to the saucer section of the ship, which actually like separated from the star drive. And then like and then eventually just then the impact of the shockwave then just like sent the saucer down to the Meridian 3 surface. And then like Picard was trying to talk Sauron out of his plans to destroy all the stars and stuff and enter the Nexus, but like Sauron wasn't listening, and then he ended up launching a missile, and then then of course it caused the star of the Viridian to collapse, and then it ended up altering the course of the Nexus ribbon, and then Picard and Sauron were then just like swept away as the shockwave was obliterating everything. And then like they then fell into the Nexus, and then sorry, yeah, sorry, something just fell over. All right. And then, like, it then showed, like, Picard then was just finding himself with his family, a family that he really never had, like, during Christmas time, and it shows, like, he has a wife and children. But then, like, he then eventually, like, realized that it was just, like, really an illusion. And then he then just saw Guinan in the Nexus also, and she told him that he is able to leave whenever he chooses, and he can go wherever and whenever he wishes. And then Picard just knew that he would need some help in order to stop Sauron, and it showed then that Kirk was also in the Nexus, and then Picard went to Kirk for some help, and so yeah, it was all good to see, like, Kirk and Picard interacting with each other. I mean, that was pretty good to see, like, the two captains of the two series, like, interacting was, like, a really pretty good thing to see. Yeah. And it showed that Kirk was, like, trying to live his old life before he, like, was captain of the Enterprise or something. And, you know, Picard was trying to explain to Kirk that he needs help, and he tried to explain like, what Sauron was up to, but Kirk just really was reluctant to leave his life, and he was just saying that he really didn't need to do anything else. But eventually, Picard then did convince Kirk to help him stop Sauron, and then, yeah, Kirk then, like, brought up Spock briefly, and then he said, like, if Spock was here, he would say he's a real irrational and illogical person, or, yeah, really illogical to take on a mission like this. But Kirk said that the mission sounded fun, and so, yeah, he and Picard then went to stop Sauron. And then they eventually arrived on the Viridian 3 again after they left the Nexus. And it was just like, just a few minutes before Sauron actually was launching the missile. And then, yeah, Kirk and Picard teamed up to, like, try to get Sauron away from launching the missile. And then, like, Kirk then was, like, trying to go after the remote to try to reposition the missile. Then eventually, like, Sauron ended up, like, shooting the bridge that the remote was on, or something, yeah. And then, like, it, like, ended up, like, separating the bridge, and it was, uh, like, holding on, like, it was getting ready to collapse, and then Kirk was on the bridge and trying to get to the remote and stuff, and then eventually, then the bridge just ended up, like, breaking off completely, and then Kirk then just fell down with the bridge. Yeah. But eventually, like, Picard was able to lock the missile in place, and it then the missile then just exploded on the launch pad, and of course, like, Sauron was killed along with it. And then it just, like, showed Kirk was, like, bleeding from his mouth, like, pinned by the bridge. And yeah, he was just, like, about, like, on his last breaths, and then just before he died, Picard just told Kirk that he did make a difference, and then Kirk eventually died. And yeah, I mean, I may be, like, a minority on this, but I actually found Kirk's death in this movie to be kind of sadder than Spock's death in Wrath of Khan. I mean, I'm not sure, like, if a lot of other people really feel that way, but I really do, like, feel that way because, I mean, after seeing Kirk, like, this was now the seventh movie he was in, and now seeing that he would die, it was just, like, pretty sad. And I mean, yeah, I mean, at least another reason I probably feel that way is because, like, at least with Spock, he did come back in the next movie, and then was just like he was around for the rest of the movies. But with Kirk here, he just like this is the last time we see him in these movies, and he never comes back. So yeah, I mean, this was like a legit death for Kirk in this film. So I actually did find it kind of sad. I mean, when the bridge fell, I was just kind of like, I just was kind of like, no. I mean, yeah, I mean, I just really did find Kirk's death to be pretty sad in this movie, seeing how this is going to be the last we see of him in this series of movies. So yeah, but then, like, Picard then buried Kirk under some rocks, which was kind of strange. And then eventually a shuttle arrived and transported Picard to the wreckage of the Enterprise saucer. But then eventually, after they assessed the damage to the Enterprise, there were then like three other starships that retrieved the survivors of the Enterprise, and then they just flew back into space for like new adventures and stuff, and that's how the movie ended. So yeah, like I said, 2.5 stars out of 4. It's just really hard to really judge whether or not it's a good or bad film. I mean, because yeah, the elements are just all over the place, and it's just really like, yeah, it's just like really hard to really come up with a judgment on whether it's good or bad. So yeah, but it does have some strong elements to it, and yeah, like and then like another like pretty sad moment with Kirk's death. Despite the fact that he had a very limited appearance in this movie, like seeing how he was a main character, he was like the main star of the original series. Seeing him die here just is pretty. Yeah, it is kind of a sad moment for me at least. All right, so yeah, it's but yeah, seeing like it's not like a spectacular film, but they're like it's definitely like not the worst of the next generation films from like based on like what people on the reception that they all got. So yeah, I guess like this movie it is worth like a viewing at least. If you can like yeah, it definitely won't like leave you like being really pissed off at it once if you watch it. So yeah, but it's not anything where you're gonna be like, oh, this is a spectacular film that you can watch over and over. So yeah, it's kind of like worth a viewing. So yeah, you can like check it out and decide for yourself what you think. All right, so that does it for my review of Star Trek Generations. I hope you guys enjoyed this review. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.